They found her fingerprints all over it, and Trump is ready for battle. As we further go down the rabbit hole of deception, it looks more and more as though the entire base of the investigation into the Trump campaign's so-called Russian ties was based on little more than fabrication and falsified documents. In short, it is a political hit job carried out by the Democratic National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign in a quest for power and world domination. Naturally, Hillary is right at the center of the deception and controversy in this massive bid for power against the will of the American people. Hillary Clinton's campaign's fingerprints are on at least 3 separate pieces of information fed to the FBI, including the Christopher Steele dossier, a dossier that many Republicans claim formed the foundation for a judge to grant a FISA warrant allowing the Federal Bureau of Investigation to spy on Trump campaign associate Carter Page. It has now been confirmed on the record as of last week by a former State Department official that associates of Hillary and her campaign were funneling information to Steele while he was compiling a dossier. The same dossier commissioned, bought, and paid for by Hillary's campaign and the DNC, all in a subversive disinformation effort. These revelations and many more just continue to pile on, each one more damning than the last, as the recent revelations that a top Department of Justice official fed the FBI information compiled by his wife who just happened to be working for Fusion GPS, the very same firm who has been paid to compile dirt on the Trump campaign while being paid by both the Clintons, their lackeys, and the DNC. The dossier was quoted extensively in the FBI's application for a FISA warrant in their concerted effort to spy on the Trump campaign, according to the recent memo released by the Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee. Last January of 2018 letter to the FBI further revealed 2 separate Senate Republicans also confirmed that Steele's now infamous dossier formed a significant portion of the warrant application. The letter from Senators Chuck Grassley, who chairs the Judiciary Committee, and Lindsey Graham was made public earlier last week. Grassley stated in his letter that it is troubling enough that the Clinton campaign funded Mr. Steele's work, but that these Clinton associates were contemporaneously feeding Mr. Steele allegations raised and additional concerns about his credibility. The Federalists have compiled a list when taken in its entirety informs what we know so far about the extent of Hillary's involvement in the FBI's Russian collusion case. Number 1, Clinton ally Sidney Blumenthal funneled information to the FBI through a contact at the State Department. In an account published by the Washington Post, former State Department official Jonathan Weiner describes how research compiled by a Clinton ally made its way into his hands and then to the FBI. Weiner was in charge of combating transnational organized crime at the State Department under Bill Clinton in the 1990s and returned under the Obama administration to work on international law enforcement. Between his 2 gigs, he became friends with Steele, who, as a result, began feeding information to the State Department and tipped Weiner off in September of 2016 to the Trump dossier he was compiling. In that same month, Weiner met Blumenthal, who provided him with notes on Trump and Russia compiled by another Clinton insider, Cody Shearer. What struck me was how some of the material echoed Steele's but appeared to involve different sources. Weiner writes in the Washington Post he also said that he decided to show the notes to Steele, who told him the information could be used to corroborate his own dossier. Steele walked away with a copy of the notes, which he provided to the FBI. Ladies and gentlemen, that is collusion. Shearer and Blumenthal, knowingly, respectively, as Mr. Fixer and Vicious Sid in Clinton's world, are staunch allies of the Clintons. Weiner notes he didn't know whether the information Blumenthal fed him was accurate, but says he fed it to Steele anyway because he was alarmed at Russia's role in the 2016 election. Grassley and Graham expressed concern in their criminal referral that Steele was vulnerable to manipulation while compiling his dossier on President Trump, as he has admitted to meeting with at least 4 different news outlets during the time, in violation of an agreement he had with the FBI, and indicated he received unsolicited and unverified tips on Trump and included them in his dossier. Simply put, the more people who knew that Mr. Steele was compiling his dossier, the more likely it was vulnerable to manipulation. Of course, the Clinton network knew the same extent about the dossier, since Hillary's campaign and the DNC had commissioned and funded the effort through Fusion GPS. Whether Blumenthal was planting bogus information to manipulate Steele or passing along what he regarded as a legitimate tip is unclear, but it's certainly not a good look. Regardless, this second unverified and unsolicited dossier made its way to the FBI thanks to the Clinton camp. Number 2, Steele was at the same time compiling a dossier paid for by the Clinton campaign and the DNC. As noted, Steele was already well into working on a dossier paid for by Clinton campaign and DNC regarding Trump's Russia ties when Weiner approached him. Perkins Coie, a law firm representing the Clinton campaign and the DNC, had hired Fusion GPS to dig up opposition research on Trump prior to the election. Fusion in turn employed Steele, a former British spy, to compile the dossier. His work was entirely funded by Democrats. Again, his work was entirely funded by Democrats. The FBI was never able to verify the salacious claims in Steele's dossier, so relied heavily on his reputation to infuse the document with credibility before the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court, according to the Republican memo and criminal referral. The Bureau continued to vouch for him before the court in subsequent applications to renew the warrant. Even after leaving, he was desperate to stop Trump from getting elected, had broken the Bureau's trust by dishing to the press in one case, and potentially lied to the Bureau outright in several other instances, a criminal offense. The court learned none of this and continued to grant the FBI permission to spy on a U.S. citizen based in part on Steele's research. Number 3, a top DOJ official fed the FBI research on Trump from his wife, also paid for by the Clinton campaign and the DNC. The third piece of information provided to the FBI in connection with Clinton allies is research compiled by the wife of former senior Justice Department official Bruce Ohr, who worked closely with Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates and her replacement Rod Rosenstein. Ohr was also a friend of Steele. Wow, the collusion just keeps getting deeper, ladies and gentlemen. Ohr's wife was employed by Fusion GPS to help compile opposition research on Trump. According to the Republican memo, Ohr eventually turned over all the information she compiled while working ultimately for the Clinton campaign and the DNC to the FBI. It's unclear whether this information made it into the FISA applications, but it's one more example of evidence received by the FBI that can be traced back to the Clinton campaign. According to the Republican memo, the FISA court was never informed of the Ohr's connection to GPS and to Steele. To sum this entire collusion up, to obtain a warrant to spy on a Trump campaign associate, the FBI relied heavily on a dossier that was never substantiated, put together by a former spy desperate to stop Trump. That dossier was paid for by powerful Democrats on Trump's rival campaign, who also paid for opposition research the FBI received from a powerful couple inside President Obama's Department of Justice. And then separately, 2 Clinton allies worked together to funnel a second